Hi, loves. Welcome to Anointed Love, a community that encourages you to love God, others, and become more like Christ. As you can tell, I am not by myself today. I have my best friend, Vivica.
Hi, guys.
And I am so excited to start and do this episode. So, before we even begin the episode, I think it's important to let you know how we met. So, I was looking for a job and I ended up working where she was working. But before I got that job, I was praying, and when I was applying, I was like, God, only open a door to the job you want me to go to. And then I'll let her talk just a little bit about our meeting.
Basically, her and a couple other girls started working at where I was working, and I was the training manager, so I had to train her. And I think you started at night. You started working at night, but then they ended up moving her to mornings, and that's what I would work was mornings. And so I was training her how to open and stuff like that. And honestly, like, it's so crazy how far we've gotten, because when I first met her, like, I wouldn't talk to her. Like, I would just train her. I would just tell her how to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very introverted, antisocial is what I say. But, like, she would always try to have conversations and stuff, and I would talk to her, but then I would just, like, that was it. You know what I mean?
So, I don't know if you caught that, but she was my boss. She was my boss. I was like, dang. But yeah, I mean, that's just how it started. And honestly, like, I just want to emphasize on the part of if I wasn't obedient to that call, if I didn't, like, even though, like, the job wasn't paying that much, if I didn't say yes and just give in to that opportunity that God was presenting to me, I wouldn't have met her. And she's, like, super important to me and love her so much. And I wouldn't have had this friendship, this relationship, if it wasn't for that yes. So for today's episode, that's what we're going to be talking about, the decision to say yes to Christ, what that looks like, and kind of just sharing her testimony just a little bit and like what she's comfortable sharing. So yeah, so let's just dive right in. So before you met me, how would you describe your life? Like, what was your life before you came to Christ?
Yeah, so basically, I was just like living a normal worldly life. Like, I was just going with the flow. I was constantly working like 5 days out of the week, like always working, because I already like had like the priorities of an adult. Like, I had to pay bills and stuff, so that was like my main focus was money, money, money. I need to pay my bills. And like, honestly, I was going through a lot before I had a relationship with God. Like, I was really depressed, dealing with anxiety. Like, it was a lot on me. So that's how it was before I encountered God. Yeah.
For me too, I was saying how I kind of knew of God and I knew there was a God, but I didn't have like a strong relationship with him. And I was going through similar stuff. Like, I was depressed, and last week's episode, if you want to go check it out, I was talking about depression, and I still go through it, but it wasn't to the extent that it is now. Like, I feel like I'm no longer alone. Like, I have somebody with me.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to accept the invitation of coming to church?
In the beginning of this year, I like was going through a lot, and I remember I used to journal a lot, and I remember writing in my journal, like, I want to have a relationship with God. Like, I wanted to start going to church, but nobody in my family really was like, they know of God, they believe in him, but they don't have a relationship. Like, they don't go to church or anything. So for me to just go by myself, like, I was afraid, I guess. And so I would pray about it, like, Lord, I want a relationship with you, lead me closer to you. And so it's crazy how, like, me and her, we started having a conversation about church one time, and she invited me. And I was going through a lot of anxiety, so I was so scared to go. Yeah, I was so scared to go, but I knew, like, I need to do this. Like, I need something different. I need something new in order to grow. So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I do remember that conversation, like, it was yesterday. It was just me, her, and I think it was one other coworker. Yeah. And I don't know how that conversation came about. Like, I don't remember how church was brought up, but I remember that, like, it was brought up, and the other girl was talking about a church that she went to. I remember you saying how you went to a church, but it was like, you know, not your church. And I was just like, wow, like that was all God. God definitely like had his hand all over that conversation because one, I don't remember how it was brought up, and two is the fact that through that I was able to invite her and have her come to church.
Yeah.
So I remember I invited you. I was working at the job for a little while, and then I ended up leaving for like a California trip with my church, and then I came back. We had that conversation. I don't remember if that conversation was before or after. I don't remember, but basically
the timing is off. But
it's
okay.
a little off. But we remember what happened.
Yeah.
And so I remember I invited you. And so my question to you is like, what made you decide to continue, even though like I invited you that first time, you still kept coming? Like I remember, like we used to carpool to church.
Yeah.
Like I was really going. I feel like in a sense I was going out of my way because I really wanted to let her have a relationship with God, and if that meant like me picking her up and dropping her off helped, I mean, why not? But my question to you is, what made you decide to continue to say yes to the invitation and to continue to just, even like when we didn't carpool, she kept going and she kept
remember
coming.
the first time I went without you to church service. But anyway, I'm very grateful that she did like invite me and like pushed me. Like even without that push, I knew this is what I wanted for myself. But I think what like kept me going was just the first service. The first service was so like, it was so new, but it was so like opening to me. You know what I mean? Like I knew it's what I was ready for. Like it was uncomfortable, but I knew I was ready for that. Like just being, it was a young adult service, and just being around all the young adults that like are so accepting and welcoming, I feel like that really allowed me to be like, wow, like I've never seen that. I've never been around that. From being in the world so much, like I never seen people that just praise the Lord and just love the Lord, you know what I mean? And so for me,
but the thing with the church that I invited her to, the thing is that I love my church, but it's so different compared to any other church because it's non-denominational, but with the influence of Pentecost. And if you know anything about Pentecost, like we praise God, like we jump, we shout, we dance, like it's crazy. And I was kind of nervous too because whenever I invite anybody to my church, I'm like, you know, it's different. And even when I first came to this church, like I was like, oh, like this is different. Yeah. But it's a good different.
Yeah. And I think just from that first service, like I felt God tugging at my heart, like really, like I felt a little conviction from the message, and I was just like I felt God wanting me to keep going, and I wanted that too, you know what I mean? So after that I just kept going every Friday, and then it turned into Sundays and then Wednesdays, and I just it was different. I was just ready to keep serving God, honestly. Yeah,
that's good. Do you remember the moment you gave your life to Christ? It can be like, okay, God, like I know for a fact this is what I want, or even when you decided to get baptized. Do you remember either of those moments?
I just remember like always feeling so much freedom. I guess deliverance just weighed off of my shoulders, because I feel like once I started, I had a relationship with God, like I just felt so much happier, so much joy than I felt before, you know what I mean? And like just giving my life to God, like getting baptized that moment, I was just like, I was so happy. I was so filled with like love. Like I knew that's what I wanted, and that's what God was calling me to do. Like I didn't want to be half in and half out. Like I didn't want to be that Christian. I didn't want to be lukewarm. You know what I mean? I knew I wanted to serve the Lord and only the Lord. Like I just was so on fire for God. You know what I mean? And it was such a good feeling. And it still is. It's amazing.
So what made you decide to get baptized?
Okay, actually,
because I feel like with baptism, like that's a big decision.
Yeah. Well, I was only going to church for like a month or two, maybe, and I was just so on fire for God, like so on fire, and I was just ready to like walk this walk with God. Like I was just like, what is the risk? What what am I gonna lose?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to lose with this. And so I remember literally you calling me. I already felt it on my heart, but I remember I was in the Starbucks drive-thru and you calling me and just I don't think you went to church. I think you were sick this day. And you're just asking me about the service and stuff. And then you asked me, like, do you think you want to get baptized anytime soon? And I was like, it's crazy you say that because, like, I've been praying about it and I feel like so on fire for God, like I'm ready to do it.
Yeah.
And then I think, like, eventually the next service or something, we ended up talking to our pastor about it, about wanting to get baptized.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I remember that. What's crazy to me is, like, that's just how God works. Like, he will use other people, and I think that is so crazy. And it's crazy that you remember that.
I know.
But I will say, like, ever since meeting her and her, like, just giving her yes of, like, yes, I want to go to church. Yes, I want to pursue God, even though, like, I don't know him that well. Like, I want to get to know him more. Her growth in God, like, was exponential. Like, I could tell, like, I don't know how to really explain it, but you can tell when someone is intentional with their relationship with God because you see God in them and you see how much they're growing in the things of Christ.
Yeah, I agree because, like, I feel like she's seen me, her out of everybody, you know what I mean, that were around. She's seen me like who I was before, kind of, you know what I mean? Although we weren't close, she seen who I was, and I know it showed. Like, I know the darkness in me just showed, you know what I mean? And like the way I was living, like, it was not how it is now, you know what I mean? And so she's seen me through this whole walk, like the growth and like
And it's also discernment too. Like, the closer you get to God, you can discern a lot about a person's character, and you can truly see God in people. Like, I truly believe that. So from making that decision and saying yes to God, how would you say your life has changed?
Honestly, like, I feel like my whole life did a whole 360, you know what I mean? Because, like, it's just...
Wait, it'd be a 180, right? Because 360, or would it?
Girl. Anyway, my life turned around. It's just so different now, you know what I mean? Like, it changed overall.
I'm still thinking. Continue.
Anyway, my life just, it changed overall, you know what I mean? Like, the things that I do, like, I used to be depressed. I, like, deal with anxiety. I feel like that's not normal, that I still kind of have my days, but it's just not as extreme as it was, you know what I mean? That's changed. Like,
I think it's normal though.
Yeah.
I think it's normal to experience anxiety and stuff.
Yeah. But like the way that I was before, it's like, so like God has brought me so far from it. You know what I mean? And the people that I'm around, like, I don't hang out with any other people like that I used to before, honestly.
That's good though. I think your circle really does matter, and I am going to talk about that in another episode with another guest. But it's cool to see when God is in your life, what he does to not only your surroundings but within you. And I can tell you for a fact, I've seen such a huge change in her. Yeah. Like, such a huge change. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say you're a completely different person, but I feel like not only were you already mature when I first met you, but I feel like you've matured in the things of Christ, if that makes sense. So, for someone who hasn't given their life to Christ or like made that decision to say yes to God, what would you tell them?
Honestly, I would ask them, what is there to risk? Because that's what I asked myself. Like, what am I going to risk? You know what I mean? Honestly, like, it's a win-win. You know what I mean? Giving your life to God. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's like, I don't know how to express it. Like, you're just delivered from so much. Like, everything we ask for from the world, it doesn't bring any peace. It don't bring love. It don't bring anything, really. You know what I mean? Like, the love of God, the way God gives us guidance and strength to our, like, actual calling. You know what I mean? Just make that little choice. Like, just do it. Just do it. Like, there's no regret that'll come from it, honestly. You know what I mean?
I actually saw something, I think it was yesterday on Instagram, where not you lose a lot following Christ, but you gain so much more. And the stuff that you lose, it's like stuff that you should lose. Like you lose depression, you lose friends that wouldn't have benefited you in the future.
Yeah.
Like you lose things that are good to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you gain, you know, eternal life, you gain joy, you gain peace, you gain all these great things that come from God. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have one more question. Is there any encouraging words or advice that you would want to give the listeners?
My advice would just be to follow God. That's what I did, and you just have to do it. Honestly, you just have to do it. Pray, and like, you just have to seek God. You know what I mean? Like, once you seek Him, that's when He will come closer to you. If you stay far away, you're not gonna feel His presence. You know what I mean? You have to constantly be in your word, praying, fasting, and all of that. You know what I mean? So definitely do it, because it is necessary to build that relationship with God and make it stronger for sure. May you continue to run after God, read your word, and know that you're loved.